To start with, the Secretary General of the Department of Health has stated that he doesn't think it's appropriate to take a pay increase given the current economic conditions that exist in the country. Now, where we spent 20 billion euros on COVID last year, we have 500,000 people unemployed. We're marching steadily towards 270 billion euros of national debt by 2025, which works out at 100,000 euros of debt per worker in the state. Do you agree with the Secretary General that it was inappropriate to receive such a pay increase in the current economic conditions?
Well, could I just say on that generally, and just give my position in terms of?
Well, I've only got 8 minutes, Taoiseach. If we could maybe deal with the specific question rather than the generals.
I'm going to deal with the specific.
Well, you just said in general, so just sorry about that.
Yeah, but look. My position is this, and having been a former Minister for Health, I think the increase is appropriate to the position.
Okay.
I think it's appropriate to the position. And long after the present incumbent leaves the position, I think the Secretary General of Health should get a higher remuneration than other government department Secretary Generals. It is an extraordinary, it's a department that is way above any other department from my experience, and I've served in 4 government departments. In terms of the response, just let me, you answered the question, I think, because it's a matter, I mean, this is a policy matter in the first instance. And in some areas where we have done this before in the public service, it has worked, whether it be the NTMA, be it NAM, be it the CEO of the HSE, be it the Canada Commissioner, be it the financial regulator. And in my view, it's not just about one individual in health, it's about the Department of Health, the responsibilities it has in terms of the allocation of the overall budget that goes to health, in terms of the transformation that is required in health, in terms of the need for addressing the issue during the COVID pandemic itself, the implementation, as I say, of the transformative programme of scientific care, and the enormous budget. And we've had issues around the National Children's Hospital and so on. So that's my view on it. Now, the Secretary General now has taken a position in relation to himself personally. That's his decision in respect of that. But my view is that we need to work on the Department of Health. We need to transform it. It has a huge challenge ahead of it. The succession of issues that health has to deal with in any one year, outside of even a pandemic, is on a scale, in my view, that's higher than other government departments.
I think it's an extraordinary pay increase, given the fact that the economy is under it's potentially unprecedented pressure at the moment, and given the fact that other members of the health service are operating under enormous pressures, very difficult jobs, but are not being remunerated properly for that. What does waiving a salary mean exactly? What economic conditions would trigger, for example, the payment of the full amount?
Well, in the first instance, as we have waived parts of our salaries, we've gifted them back to the state. Ministers have. I presume the Secretary General will do the same. In terms of waiving a salary, you gift back that portion of the salary that you are not receiving, you gift it back to the state. I think that's the most effective way to do something of that kind.
Okay, so maybe it's not a permanent waiver as such. Does this set a precedent for other wages within the Secretary General level within the government?
Any government at any particular time can make decisions in respect of remuneration. This government has made a specific decision in relation to the Department of Health, and it's a decision that I support, obviously.
The waiver, does that affect the pension, do you understand?
And I'm not aware, not fully au fait with that.
Okay. I wanted to turn my attention to the Cregan Commission, if I can. You mentioned that in your opening address. The first module of the Commission, which has been examining the write-down of 119 million euros in debt by the state-controlled IBRC with the sale of SiteServe. And you'll remember that this was a massive crisis when this came to light before. So we understand, obviously, that the company was acquired by another company in the control of Dennis O'Brien at the time. Now, I'm flabbergasted to think that obviously this particular module has been going on for 6 years. And I understand just in the last number of weeks, you have given the go-ahead for another extension till October. So the final cost of this particular commission could be 30 million euros, according to sources in your own government, but could run nearly up to 70 million euros, depending on how this completes. Now, there's two major questions in the minds of people, I think, on this. There's the question of the length of time for justice to be achieved, and that's a major question. Justice delayed is justice denied. And given that this rocked the government back 6 years ago, and it's still now receding into history as far as without an answer of justice, is problematic. And given that, this is 30 million euros of taxpayers' money, which is extremely difficult to raise at this stage, what is the government going to do to make sure that this achieves its investigative purpose in a reasonable time and within a reasonable budget?
Well, as you know, Deputy, once an Oireachtas agrees to establish a commission, and the Taoiseach, in this case, the Taoiseach's office is the administrative sort of locus for the commission. Once that's established, there can be absolutely no interference by either the Oireachtas or the government in the work of that commission. Just hear me out. So we've received a request. The interim report suggests that it's at a very advanced stage, and that there's a reasonable prospect of it being brought to conclusion. In my view, from what has been written to me as the administrative head, and so therefore I've written to all of the leaders outlining the decision to grant the instance request for a further extension until the 31st of October of this year. If that wasn't granted, it would effectively dissolve the commission with no findings to show in return for the substantial costs to date, which I think are up to around 9.6 million to date. It has cost, and so we'd have no return for those costs or any additional costs that would occur but not yet paid.
Okay. Do you have any idea when the Commission will conclude its investigation?
Well, as I said, the indications are the 31st of October 2021.
Well, I hope you're right, Taoiseach, but I'm afraid I'm not convinced just at this moment in time. Just with regards, you mentioned the shared island element in your address there. The Minister for Health in the north of Ireland, Robert Swan, recently stated just in the last week that he was finding it difficult to achieve cooperation from the Southern administration, and that there wasn't a natural flow of information to the Minister for Health in the north. So he indicated, for example, that information pertaining to variants that were found in the south, that information was achieved by him through the media. Now, it's not an incredible situation, Taoiseach, that when there's so much logic to an all-Ireland approach to this illness, that you would have a unionist who are in general have an aversion to north-south cooperation, complain about the southern government's lack of communication of key information for the health and well-being of the population. I've asked you questions of where the Secretariat is for north-south cooperation on COVID. I understand that there's none. I asked you where is the locus of cooperation, which department it exists in with regards to north-south cooperation on COVID. I understand there is no specific department which is managing north-south cooperation on this. Why is it that we have unionist ministers complaining about the lack of cooperation by the Southern administration on a life and death issue such as this?
Thanks, Deputy Swabine.
I don't accept your point. I don't accept that there's been a lack of cooperation. I don't accept that there's been.
Is it good enough that he would achieve the information through the media, Taoiseach?
I don't accept that either.
But that's what he said.
But I'm just saying, I don't know what happened. I can't be.
If you allow the Taoiseach to answer, Deputy.
Presentation of what's in the media, Deputy, I didn't interrupt you, but I want to make it very clear. I've had discussions with the First Minister and Deputy First Minister about variants as far back as the B117. I know our Chief Medical Officer had discussions with Northern Ireland's Chief Medical Officer in respect to B117, which is one of the earliest variants that we all know too much about because of the degree to which it spread so rapidly here in the north and indeed in the United Kingdom and now elsewhere across Europe. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think everyone has acknowledged that the relationship between both sets of officials, north and south, has been constructive and productive. We have sent the main area of difficulty has been around the travel information in terms of the passenger locator form information and getting that, and we took steps to try and satisfy that and the request from the Northern Ireland Executive in relation to that. So there is a memorandum of understanding that has been signed between the two chief medical officers. They do engage regularly in respect of decisions that they are taking, and we do too, you know, in terms of the political side of it, in terms of the executive and the Irish government. Minister for Health here, Stephen Donnelly, engagement with Robin Swan, Minister Coveney, again with political leaders in Northern Ireland. And I myself in discussions with Arlene Foster and Michelle O'Neill at various times in relation to COVID and aspects and dimensions of COVID.